Welcome to the new year, 2019. Happy New Year to everyone out there. As mentioned, this is the A Boxing Life podcast. Have a very special guest today. We go way back. I'm talking way back elementary, childhood. Way back in the state of Arkansas. This is a good friend, a dear friend of mine. I saw him when he first started in the world of photography. He's one of the best out there. And I'm not just saying that because I'm saying that. I'm just speaking on what he actually does. And once you see his work, you will understand that yourself. But he's based out of Little Rock, Arkansas. He's been published. He has one of the hottest camera review channels on YouTube, Mr. Jeremy Smith, with Jeremy Smith Photography. How's it going, Jeremy?
Yeah, doing well, buddy.
All
Good to
right.
talk to you this new year for sure.
Hey, yeah. It's all good to see you. All the good talking with you. Good seeing you, of course. When you come back to DC, hey, we're hanging out again. I'm making my way down there. We're hanging out again. It's all good.
Definitely. We've
All
got
right.
many adventures that we can go on.
Definitely. So, yeah, I just wanted to speak with you since you're one of the best out there in regards to just how cameras work, how we get things done in the world of action shooting. So, you're a commercial photographer and a portrait photographer primarily. When you throw, say, for instance, sports in the mix, live action, like what are the differences between all these different forms of photography for the most part?
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting, you know. That's what I like about photography the most is that you've got all these different things. The cameras themselves don't necessarily change. The technology is, very powerful these days as well. But with all these different subjects, the biggest thing is the human aspect that ends up affecting things. You know, that subject to photographer interaction. And some of the tools we use are a little bit different in different types of photography. And of course, we also just see quite a difference in the approach we have to take with all these different situations because some things, as far as a more portrait standpoint or a commercial standpoint, we can have a lot more control over. But whenever we're dealing with like sports, you know, it's not like we can pose a sports star and say, hey, you know, I want you to be exactly here during the game. You know, we kind of the photography kind of becomes a secondary under those situations because at that point it's about capturing the live action that's happening and not about creating something for the camera. So a little bit different approach for sure.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, taking that into account. So when I'm at these different boxing events and things, I'm taking my Nikon D3300, courtesy of your recommendation, of course. It gets the job done for me. I love the video that comes out of it. Now, that being said, a lot of the different guys that are there, guys and girls that are interviewing and such, have their phones. So from that perspective, have phones essentially caught up, or are they at a point where they can give you just the same amount of video quality that you could get from one of these more thicker, elite level type cameras?
Yeah, so the thing that's interesting about that is, you know, the phone technology has come a long way, you know, and a lot of the photographers are a little bit elitist minded about phones. They're like, oh, well, you know, that's not a real camera, etc.
Yeah.
Um, but the truth of the matter is, you know, depending on who's using it, any camera can be, a real camera. However, it is important to note that there are going to be limitations under certain conditions. If you're taking photographs under ideal conditions, outdoors, plenty of lights, you can get great results with any camera. We're going to be a little more limited in those situations where we're doing sports or something like that, especially sports in the light, just because with phones, the technology's gotten to be extremely good, but we still have what I like to call a packing problem, meaning that we're trying to pack all this technology into a very small device. And so photography is all about light. It's about how much light the camera can gather. And because the camera of the phone is, has to be smaller with a smaller image sensor, it's going to be less effective at gathering light under those less than ideal conditions. So even though the cameras have gotten to be much better on phones and the technology has allowed them to get better photographic quality even with a smaller packing, a larger camera using the same technology still does better because we have more real estate. that can be used for a larger sensor that can
Oh,
gather
yeah.
more light. So while the phones are very, very great for what they're designed for, under those demanding conditions, they're still not going to be ideal.
Okay, sounds good. I know you mentioned lighting. You've always mentioned lighting to me. I've always heard others mention lighting. For instance, when we're at boxing events, sometimes we'll have some that are outside, some are indoor at larger venues, smaller venues, and of course the lighting within the venues in themselves is not very good at times. And then of course outdoors, depending on the day, the type of day, and the weather and such, it could be muggy, it could be bright. Now, from a lighting perspective, when you're talking of bringing your own lights, external lights that you would have, so from an indoor outdoor perspective, does it matter? Would you want to have lights if you're outside and it's a sunny day? Would you want to take lights with you if you're shooting? If you're inside, is it like almost always a must that you have some form of lighting? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so good question. It's one of those things where uh, that control of the light, of course, is making the biggest difference. If we're shooting in indoor conditions, and this kind of gets me back into those differences between like the type of photography I do a lot of, portraits and other things of that sort, versus action. So whenever we start talking about a portrait shoot, we can set up a lot of additional lights to be able to get the look we want. During those action scenarios, typically speaking, during sports shoots and things like that, artificial lighting is usually not permitted, and we have to rely a lot more on just the light in the environment. And so that definitely limits things quite a bit. So that really is where we see a huge difference between the camera coming into effect. As far as doing like any type of shooting outdoors goes, being able to use lighting in those scenarios makes a difference too, just because sometimes we may have light in the environment and we may not necessarily have that light in the right spot. So being able to have light, whether it be something as simple as positioning your subject differently or going out on a certain time of day, or even if it does get into adding additional light to the scene, that gives us a lot more flexibility with coping with lights in different outdoor scenarios. So that
Okay.
additional control makes a huge, huge difference, even if it's outdoors on a sunny day.
Okay, sounds good. That does make sense. It definitely makes sense in terms of getting the right shots and such. Now, we have lighting. What about the lens? Does the lens matter when you're shooting, say, action shots and things of that nature?
Oh yeah, so lenses matter huge when it comes to action photos, especially. In the world of portrait photography, we want those lenses oftentimes that let in a lot of light because they allow us to focus on the subject and really make them stand out against that blurred background.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but when we start talking about like sports photography, especially in low light conditions, those lenses that let in a lot of light, we use those for a different purpose. And the purpose there ends up being to help us freeze the action. Because if we have a camera really freezing action, it's going to shoot very, very quickly. But the faster the camera shoots, the less light actually comes in. So basically, by being able to allow the camera to be used with a lens that lets in more light, if the lens lets in many more times light, that allows it to shoot many more times faster, which means you get much better shots of action photos and things like that. So the
Okay.
lenses become extremely, extremely important for those types of scenarios.
All right. Well, when I'm shooting my podcast videos, I'm still using the standard lens that came with the Nikon, but it
Yeah,
seems to be doing well so far.
yeah,
um, good. So, so segue into another subject now. Brand. Does brand matter when we're talking cameras? Is it more about the brand or the style of camera? What's the 411 in that regard?
Yeah, so as far as brand of cameras go, whenever you buy a certain camera brand, you're basically buying a certain set of features, you know.
Uh-huh.
And so different camera companies have different pros and cons. For example, people when they start looking at like doing 4K video, for example, that's something that we see a much greater presence with companies like Panasonic and Sony in that area. If you're thinking about being able to get a lot of very specialty lenses, oftentimes Canon has an advantage there. So it just kind of depends on what type of photography a person's doing. These days, we have the so-called mirrorless cameras, which are they're kind of evolution of technology.
All right.
And traditional camera companies like Nikon and Canon are not as well versed in that area yet, whereas companies like Fuji and Olympus and Panasonic and Sony, have a lot more development there. So it kind of just gets down to be personal preferences, for a lot of people. But of course, it's certainly something to discuss as well.
Oh yeah.
It's a topic hotly debated on the internet, no doubt.
All right, yeah, and that makes me think of the GoPro. That seems to be one of those cameras that are sort of taking on the fold of being the go-to sort of action camera. Are they the best in getting action shots? GoPro, the cameras that they offer, or is it just that it's more convenient from a cost perspective or anything of that nature?
Yeah, so the interesting thing about GoPros is that, whenever GoPros first came to the market, they allowed us to do something different than what we could do in the past. Even with a lot of the cameras we have on the market now, as far as whether they be DSLR cameras or mirrorless cameras and so on, those cameras are really, really good. They've been in the market for quite a while. But whenever GoPros came out, they became known as the sort of go-to point of view camera. So we could easily put cameras in places where we couldn't before. We could put cameras on a helmet or we could attach them to our body and get that unique perspective. So I don't think that GoPros are going to be the go-to camera for just like a standalone camera. However, GoPros are excellent cameras whenever you start talking about wanting to get some additional shots you wouldn't be able to normally get in your photos or video. They're very, very akin to drones. Drones kind of do the same thing. They allow us to be able to capture photos and video from an angle and a perspective that we hadn't been able to do easily in the past. So that's
Okay.
the biggest advantage of them.
Okay.
So yeah,
All right, sounds good. Now, of course, I've mentioned bigging you up. Of course, you're one of the best photographers out there. I can't go without saying that I've seen some photographers or some who claim to be photographers that their work just doesn't compare to some of the others that I've witnessed having as far as their shooting and their shots and such, their portraits, so on and so forth. Now, in that regard, like, what is it that separates a photographer, a good photographer, from a, I guess you could say, not so good photographer? But like, because when I see your stuff, I can definitely understand it. But there are sometimes I see others, and I'm like, you know what? That just doesn't seem like this this guy really put much effort into it. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
yeah. So I think that photography is just like so many other disciplines out there. It doesn't take as long to get a fundamental understanding of it, but it's something that definitely takes a much longer period of time to start to master it.
Yeah.
I feel like it's very important for everyone to remain open-minded because there's always going to be something new to learn. But yeah, one of the biggest things I think that separates more advanced photographers from people that are just starting out is consistency in their work. There's I don't like to use the term, lucky shot, or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I do
Yeah.
feel like a lot of people, they take some images under very good lighting conditions and so on, in very favorable circumstances, and they get some really good shots every once and again. But I think that being a photographer is also about being a problem solver. And the only way that you can learn to solve these problems that we may encounter on the shoot is just time. There's no substitute for time and experience.
Oh yeah.
So I think that consistency, I think that's the biggest thing that separates the boys from the men.
All right.
So,
All right.
is yeah, I mean, it just takes time to develop that consistency.
So that's a new quotable right there. Consistency separates the boys from the men. Jeremy Smith. All right, we're gonna take that one down. Now, as far as any action shooting, sports shooting, have you done any yourself? Have any examples or anything of that nature?
So I have done a little bit of action shooting. It's kind of interesting. One of the cameras that I have been spending a lot of time testing lately, a camera called Sony A9. And in this world of mirrorless cameras, basically the action photography segment is something of a segment where a lot of people refer to it as the final frontier of mirrorless cameras. This new
Okay.
technology hasn't proven itself in that area, but the Sony A9 is one of the first cameras that has come out to kind of push into that territory. So even though I'm not a sports photographer, I went out with a photographer who's very experienced. Both photographers' name is Mark Wagner, and we went out to a basketball game, and he got me the first pass. There's a video on YouTube about that. I do very clueless in the video because I don't have a whole lot of sports knowledge. But anyways, we went out and tested that camera, and during that shoot, I was able to capture some shots that I was particularly happy with. With Mark's guidance, I was able to put the camera in his hand to get his take on this new technology, because I think it's interesting to see a photographer who's been shooting for 20, 30 years. I want to get their take on how the new technology is affecting their work as a photographer. So I did capture a few shots here. So these are just a few during the basketball game here. I
Wow.
was able to capture it. So definitely outside of my normal field of
Wow.
work, but I find that sometimes pushing yourself into a new area makes a big difference as well, because you're able to kind of pick up on things that can help you in your normal work also.
Okay. Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
agree. I agree. That's nice. Those shots were nice. Melissa. She has Melissa boxing that thing going, so she's getting in and getting some shots in. I have to show her some of these so she has an example of the standard right there, because you just set the standard, my man, and that's good to go. But what do you have there? I know you're a big Sony guy, so what's the latest? What's the latest and greatest?
yeah. So this is the camera I was speaking of a moment ago that we were testing during that shoot.
All right.
This is the Sony A9. So the interesting thing about all this technology is that if we think about all the different types of cameras, we think about phones and so on. Basically, the thing that ends up determining that quality is how big that image sensor is in the device. So if you think about a phone's image sensor is about the size of your pinky nail, very very small. So because of that small design of the phone, you have an image sensor that doesn't have very much surface area to actually gather light. You think about a camera like this, that image sensor is going to be many times larger. So you can kind of see right there. So
Okay.
we have a surface area that's much much larger to gather light. The technology in this camera is also used in the latest phones as far as how the image sensor is actually manufactured. But because we have that technology scaled up here to a larger size, this is still going to do much better when we start talking about those unfavorable circumstances like low light and action and all that.
All right.
So yeah, so this has been very interesting. Lens wise, this is a good example. This is the lens
Wow.
that I use for a lot of my work. This lens is used to take the photographs I just showed. And
Wow.
so if you look at the lenses that come with your camera by default, those lenses are going to be capable of letting in a fairly decent amount of light. This lens right here can let in about 8 times more light than those standard lenses. So
Wow.
that basically means the camera is going to be able to shoot 8 times faster, which means that you improve your chances of getting sharp shots when you've got people moving very quickly and everything. So this is the sort of setup that is ideal for shooting under those unfavorable circumstances. But
Wow.
it's
Yeah.
pretty interesting, If you
Yeah. It is.
if you go out and capture some shots, and you have plenty of light and you have really good circumstances, most people would be hard pressed to tell the difference between using something like this in the phone. But whenever you get to those conditions that are not favorable, that's where things become different. So it's pretty interesting how it all works out.
Okay. Well, yeah, sounds good. Hey, I know how that world of the lenses are just based on my interactions with you. I know those lenses can be pretty interesting and they can get expensive and all that good stuff. Um, but I guess, if they make that difference, it's all about that quality. So you want to gain that quality. Look at that thing. That's a behemoth. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I feel a bit sarcastic I have a short captain sense of humor. So a lot of times I might be out shooting and someone might say, man, you must be able to see the moon with that thing. I say, well, not really. This lens is very, very large because it's designed to get a little light. This actually doesn't zoom very, very far. But some folks say, man, you don't need all that stuff, if you want to capture images. And I'll say, well, yeah, I just have to carry it around just for my workout purposes. It's like, yeah, trust me, I assure you, if I didn't have to carry this stuff around, if I could legitimately get that same effect with something smaller, then I would. But
see, and that in a sense is what separates the men from the boys.
That's right. After carrying around the stuff, you get some guns after a while, carrying it around.
Oh yeah.
I always tell people don't let my slender appearance fool them.
Hey, without a doubt. So next time you're up, we're gonna have to throw you in the boxing ring and see what you can do sparring wise. So.
Oh yeah, I might have to, I don't know.
But it's good. Hey, well, you know what, man, it's so great talking with you as always. As far as your website and all of that stuff, social media, how can people get to you?
So website-wise, you can find me at jsmith-photography.com. That's going to be my main site. You can also find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. There I'm known as @Photog J the Great. And I also have a YouTube channel as well. You can find a link to that on my main website. Or you can go to YouTube and search for Jeremy Smith Photography, and you will find me there too. It's like youtube.com/Jeremy Smith Photography. So,
all right, sounds good.
You can reach out and stay in touch.
All
Check out some of our reviews and tutorials if you're interested in photography. And once again, I do a little behind the scenes of my shoots on YouTube as well.
All right, and I'll make sure to put all of those links in whatever goes out in regards to this video on YouTube and such. So, yeah, man, it's so great talking with you. Again, Happy New Year. Of course, I'll be seeing you again 2019. Hey, it doesn't stop here. So
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it, no doubt. We got to head up to Toronto this time, perhaps.
Hey, and Toronto's a pretty good boxing town. They have a lot of good stuff going on there, too. So we'll definitely do that. And in the meantime, be sure to tell your mom I said hello and all that good stuff. And appreciate you coming on, and I'll talk back with you.
All right, sounds good.